Hi, everyone. We want to talk about AI today and how AI is connecting with Saito, the work that we're doing, and how we think it's going to be helping us in rolling out a more global network.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I think like we're like pretty much everyone else. AI has been trundling along, and anyone working in development, tech, software, so much has changed. We've individually been using AI in a bunch of different ways, and we've started talking about how it, started talking more in a more organized way about how it meshes into what we're doing, how we see the future.
mhm.
I think that just made us think, why don't we let people know what's going on? Because it's really quite exciting and
Mhm.
there's a lot happening. So, kind of just an impromptu
Yeah.
update on that.
So, I guess what have we been using AI for? We've started with baby steps.
Mm.
Um, we kind of conceptualize the code base as consensus is the core and routing and Rust is the core. And we consider the modules kind of a layer out from that.
Yeah.
And within the modules, like the UI components, are a layer out from that.
Yeah.
So we've been experimenting with them in controlled areas.
Yeah.
Um, so we saw them first with the CSS refactor.
Hmm.
This is driven by the store. We want to be simplifying the CSS so it's easy for people to develop themes. So
Yeah.
that was one of the first areas we
It's
started.
also one of the easiest things you can do because if nothing else, the AI tools you get in something like Cursor or whatever are fantastic find and replace tools, right? They can go and do clever find and replace without having to write horrific regexes
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So you can quite quickly refactor a CSS code base and then also
Mhm.
obviously see the results.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the places we all started. Yeah.
So I'd say that's kind of the easiest. We've been experimenting with them also with smart NFTs. I mean,
Mm.
Rich, you've got a story. I think you just did something this morning with
Yeah, so I was belligerently trying to get to a certain ratio on one of the games and was manually calculating like wins for attempts, right? So I was getting annoyed at having to do that. And I thought, oh, well, you could just write a smart NFT
Mm,
to add a column to the leaderboard to show you percentage win rate, right?
mm,
Which was just a fancy. Then I just thought, okay, well, I'll do this, but I'm going to try and write zero code. So I just cracked open. I used Codex GPT in its like heaviest form, but all I did was tell it the scenario, and I copied and pasted the page into a GPT window and said, "This is the page, this table. I would like to add a column, blah blah blah. Oh, while you're there, can you make the columns sortable? So when you click on the top, they all sort.
mm,
And then, oh, this thing's it only appears on the screen sometimes. So can you deal with that?"
mm,
And basically copied and pasted that into the console, which is I think the only dev thing I needed to do, and it worked. So I tested it, and then I just put in a smart contract, a smart NFT rather, and now if I enable that smart NFT, the leaderboards all have that feature,
yeah.
and that's really cool because I literally didn't write any code. I think it helped
Mm,
speed wise. It helped that I know how web pages work, but that just helped me specify probably
yeah.
more exactly what I wanted, and may have avoided one loop through. Oh, that didn't work, and then
Yeah.
try again. But it was, it took all of 3 or 4 minutes, and it's sitting there in a smart NFT in my Saito install right now. I've made five. So if anyone wants leaderboard enhancements, let me know, and I'll send you the NFT.
I could use it for Spider. Actually, that's my solitaire game. I'm like, can I get above? Can I get above the
uh,
22% win rate? You know.
right.
Um,
That's
Yeah,
yeah.
I've noticed it. We've used AI with the stack. That's been very helpful, and
Hmm.
we experimented a bit with it on Vault, some of the UI components. One
Yeah.
of the things that I think it's very good actually with the UI structure that we've got
Mm.
because there are areas where it screws up. It screws up whenever it has to make semantic guesses about the meaning of things that it's not writing.
Yeah.
And it loves doing things like adding variables that are pointless craft.
Mm.
So we're not unleashing AI on the source code. We have been using it, source meaning like consensus and stuff.
Hmm.
I did use it in a recent arcade refactor. However, a lot of that its functionality needs to maintain the same. You're not allowed to break things, but we are removing these four variables and we want to switch them and use them in that fashion. So
Hmm.
we are using it for more controlled kind
Well, I
of
think for me,
efficiency.
it's also been like, everyone's heard the horror stories of like guy asks cursor to do something, comes back, and production database has been deleted or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
so with consensus code, like we're obviously just not going to let it touch that because there's, it's what we've seen as well is like it's great if you have a very standard, very generic code base. If you're
Yeah.
building a web page with standard toolkits, it never really makes a mistake because everything's
Yeah.
as it expected. If you're doing something like peer to peer, often it does make mistakes because it's assuming a different architecture. Like most code is different, and so it doesn't get it. So something as unique as Saito consensus, it's
Yeah.
going to make wrong assumptions, just like a human does when the new dev first looking at
Well,
consensus will knock rocks off.
I've been dealing with the game observer. The game observer is broken, or it was broken. And it's stuff like this where it's kind of on the edges, and it gives Sato a bit of a bad smell if someone stumbles into that because the feature's there and it's broken. And as soon as there's anything on Sato that's broken, it reflects poorly on the project, and it reflects poorly on, people are like, oh, well, it's not reliable. Doesn't matter how many games they've played. Doesn't matter how many video calls they've made. Like psychologically, you start feeling like if I click that button, is it going to work?
Yep.
I've noticed that was anything that's got these complicated interactions, especially with code bases that haven't been written by the AI, become a problem. And then also, it loves to do things like add variables, and then it will start manipulating the value of the variable, assuming that it's manipulating how things work.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, in a more complicated system, that's not always the case.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've noticed it's most powerful for UI
Yeah.
actually in the Sato system because the way that you can create these UI components now is almost so standardized that you basically have three files to work on. You've got the CSS file, you've got the HTML template file,
Yeah.
and you've got usually the controller file that handles interactions if you click on the items.
Yeah.
So
that's what's really beautiful too, because you can often just if it doesn't find a template for what you want done in the system already, you can point it at one, and so it can very
yeah.
quickly say, okay, that's the pattern I'm replicating.
I mean, my takeaway, if we kind of pull back,
Yeah.
how does this affect what we're doing?
Yeah.
One, I think, Richard, you and I are both on the same page that almost any dev work, certainly within a few months out, is going to be AI first, I think. And so we're moving towards the wiki as the informational repository, and then the network where it's dynamically compiled modules where you can drag and drop and install them. So the dev docs, I think in the wiki, as we're streamlining them, we're going to be making them AI first.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think what we're seeing is like to get kind of AI ready, a combination of documentation, but then also some fairly astute refactoring can really make a difference, and that can be surprising stuff. Like they were saying, like you were saying, the semantics, making sure the variables are really clearly named, or put in clear structure like Saito, then module name, then component name, then thing
the
in all of
events
the
have
class names.
standards, you know where to look.
That stuff actually really helps, which is kind of funny because it's also what would help a junior developer. And so, like, that to me is the kind of combination. Because one thing I've been doing is I've just been trying to get a cluster of agents, like a team of agents, to write whole cloth software. Like, not inside the code base at all. So from scratch piece of software, looking at the code base, but just saying, given that there's a node running that software, connect to it and do something. And right now you can get a piece of software to like build a wallet, have a balance, sync blocks, like tell you what the latest block was, and show messages out of blocks in about 30, 40 minutes just with a team of 4 or 5 agents. That's a whole new application, like quite a big one. But it starts to hit those walls where there's stuff it just doesn't anticipate, like UTXO management. Like it gets its balance, it can see how to do that, so it assumes it can spend stuff, but then it tries to spend it. And
it assumes almost it assumes server client.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, right? Like, because one of the interesting things is if we're taking a look at the blockchain space, I think anything that's a smart contract is server client. And the really interesting stuff that's happening in Sato, which people aren't really thinking about, is the fact that there is this dynamic mesh network. Right? like that I can be interacting on Saito IO with people on Red Square, but at the same time, I've got a relationship with Richard via OMSI,
Mm. Yeah.
right? So I'm kind of indexing his posts too. And I think to the extent that stuff is happening on Slido.io, it can be masked because the peer-to-peer relationship is masked by the fact you've got this one server.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really curious for people who are doing AI or exploratory stuff. I think it's speeding up our process of module development
Yeah.
very much in this situation. If we have a UI that we know we're building towards and we know what data needs to be displayed on the screen, I think it really speeds up module development.
Hmm.
So if you are listening to this and you're thinking, well, I'm interested in writing kind of peer-to-peer dynamic module, if you need help with that, or you even want to throw it at us, and I'd be happy to kind of take on some exploratory projects and
Hmm.
see what we can do with them as part of a process of finding out, well, okay, how do we break this down and get AI to start
Yeah.
building really
Well, I think
peer-to-peer?
that's exactly where I think we want to do the kind of
Mm,
take the learning from where we've gotten to is how do we, is it refactoring, is it documentation, is it commenting in the code, etc., around some of these items like slip management and the finer points of being peer to peer on a blockchain,
yeah.
where there simply are not examples out there for the LLMs to be copying, right? With a
Well,
UI
they,
that's
they
supposed to
also
copy.
they make assumptions, and it's all server client. I remember
Mm,
once it was maybe it was the arcade. It like the LLM kept complaining because there's two entry points. There's on
mm,
confirmation, and there's handle pure transaction. And I actually agree. I think we need to clean this up semantically because it's really handle on chain transaction, handle off chain transaction.
yeah.
And like getting the semantics right is really important for the LLMs because otherwise, anything
Yes.
that has the same word, they assume it's the same thing,
Right.
right? So initializing a game, initializing the arcade module, initializing the game queue, it's like stuff like that. Don't mix it up,
Mm.
and they'll walk you into circular bugs where you're like, you can kind of tell that it doesn't really know what it's doing.
Yeah, well, that's the question for me. It's like, where should we be concentrating on possibly using AI to do it, but refactoring or documenting or reworking the semantics of the code base so that these tools can just go from 30% to 60% to 75% and so on in terms of how much they can, how far they get before they need direction and help, because that's really going to be the way I think the bulk of people are developing. I mean that and it's
Yeah.
smart NFT stuff, which like at the start we were talking about that kind of onion skin thing of like the CSS right on the outside, and then there's like
I
UI
want us
JavaScript.
to I want us to redo all of those NFT overlays.
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, the main thing there is what I realize is we probably want to test the JavaScript button in the NFT create space, so you can just check that it works right there, right? Because then
Yeah.
you can just ask AI to do a thing for you, paste it in, press test,
Mm.
see if it works. And if it's
Yeah.
something simple, then like it could be as simple as like, is this key on the UI anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you want, you just that's something you can explain. It can give you a pop up or whatever when that happens,
Yeah.
right? So that way you can just press test, you can see it works, deploy the NFT. But that's on those like outer two layers, right? Like CSS and then UI JavaScript. Right? So the AI is really totally competent there already. I think
Yeah.
as you come in towards the center, and then you've got interactions, right? Kind of consensus or that core networking layer where you've got interactions at the node level about like sharing transactions and I'm a node, but I'm also a browser and I want this information for the
Yeah.
user versus I'm handing out. That's where it starts getting stuck. And I think that's where we can start thinking, well, how do we let it know what to do in those cases, right? It may just be building out really declarative modules from now on that show how that's done.
Mm.
Um, because that's the obvious one with the UI is it can go and find an example and work from that. And like any person, like
Hmm.
half the developers out there started off by hacking on something, finding something that did
Yeah.
basically what they want and changing it, right? And
Mm.
that's the LLMs actually work kind of similarly. They try and port over stuff if they've got it. If they don't, they have to make stuff up, and that's where they start hitting their limits, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if there's a takeaway here. The takeaway is that AI. I guess yeah, we're using it. We're looking
Mm-hmm.
at it. We're seeing how it's useful. I think it's going to be really. I think it's going to be really great for dynamic module compilation.
Yeah, well, I think that's like it's def for smart NFTs, and I think dynamic modules. Let's do some of them. See where
Yeah.
we get with that. But I think that's like obviously the next thing. It'll be a while before, like the experiment I had with building a whole new application. It's possible, but it
Hmm.
requires a lot more smarts as a dev and much more knowledge about what's happening inside of it. So that's a kind of
Yep.
like future thing for me is how would we get it to do that? Um,
I think the big open question is how do we, long term, it just is going to digest everything. So
yeah,
if you've got an AI, you can feed it at GitHub.
yeah,
Um, I think on the wiki we're going to have documents designed almost for AI, written almost for AI that says this
hmm
is how to do the development, this is how to do the component. Because when we're talking, like I just did an arcade refactor, a lot of it was simplification,
mm,
right? Because you add features over time, and this data variable that's only supposed to store one thing, all of a sudden it's got five things in it,
mm,
and you've got a bunch of functions that are updating each one independently, and they can get a bit out of sync, and it gets messy. And a large part of the refactor is like, oh no, it's
yeah,
we're a single item identified by a single transaction signature, which is the key. um,
yeah. Just
you know
make it more obvious because that way it takes away a need for any documentation on that. It's
yeah.
just it's clear from if all the examples of it being done in the code base are the same, it's really clear to the LLM. This is how you do that. You don't need to tell it.
Well, it's also clear to me. I don't know if you have the same feeling. It's clear to me, or do you agree? I think as the features begin to reinforce each other, Sato gets stronger and stronger.
Mm,
I think we saw it first with chat moving into the games, and
hmm
then we saw it with chat in the arcade. So it's kind of interesting because one of the AI first things it lets you do is you start by having the standalone applications.
mm,
But where it gets really powerful is if they're designed in a way that they can then be opened up in other applications, right?
mm.
Like leaderboards coming into the
Yeah,
arcade,
yeah.
right? Like that's how I see my. It's how I see my position.
Did you get
Uh,
another coffee? It looks like you got another coffee coming.
no, I got a power cord.
That's only less about co-working spaces. Anyway,
So
um, yeah, no, I think it's really exciting. I was watching Nate B. Jones YouTube, which is just a way of feeling like you're way behind on everything to do with AI if you keep up with
mm,
Nate B. Jones. But he was saying like the thing is, it's like AI won't. It shouldn't be a cost saving to your business or whatever. It should allow you to expand your ambitions, right? Like
yeah,
that's the way you should be looking at it. That's certainly how I'm feeling about it at the moment for us, where it just gives us the ability to try some things that would
mm,
have felt outlandish in terms of the use of resources or just the ambition of trying to do it
yeah.
um, pretty reasonably. So yeah, I think it's pretty exciting for me outside, so I
It
wanted to talk
turns
about
it
that.
turns bigger projects into more manageable, compartmentalized ones. I wouldn't have tackled the arcade refactor without AI and the ability to
Mm,
hold stuff constant and tell it, look, we just need to simplify this. Like even simple stuff like generate a report of this, let me review it, and then
yeah.
we'll make the
Well, I think
changes.
that's the stuff where I'm trying to learn building that kind of standalone wallet thing. Just trying to learn how
Yeah,
to do that with get a team of agents to do it. Part of what I'm wanting to do is also then get it to be able to cross test its own work, at least
yeah,
within a certain amount of things. So like that, it's creating sound transactions. It's actually getting content out of blocks, etc. So working how to tell the AI to do its own testing then expands the ability of what we can do even more because you
mm,
can let it go a little bit more wild, at least on the UI side. I don't think it'll pick up
yeah.
consensus issues in a hurry, but that stuff's kind of really interesting. But it's also a learning curve, like how do we actually execute that, and hopefully we'll come up with some tools that
Yeah.
are embedded into the
It
system.
struggled. It didn't really understand the difference between an overlay and a UI component. So I see stuff like that as where the wiki is going to go. Maybe
Yeah.
we're going to have an AI package that these are
Well,
the big
I'd say
files in the
at
Git
some point
store.
I mean, the wiki's in Git anyway, so it's probably a matter of merging that into the code base somewhere for the
Yeah.
machines to find, just to get basic instruction on like,
One,
here's some rules.
one thing to mention, though, I think, is
Yeah,
because I've noticed that repeatedly, like if you're a crypto project and you're doing a decent job, people assume that you're sold.
right.
people don't realize, no, like we're an open source project, we're community driven, like we're really
Mm.
small in the scheme of things. If there's someone out there who wants to play with AI and work with
Yeah,
Sato, and you need
let us
like we're
know.
happy that you could do it. You can
Yeah,
just do it, and you can let us know what you need from us.
yeah.
So this is kind of like it's us telling you what we're doing. It's not
Mm,
us telling you how AI needs to interact with Sato. Um,
mm. Yeah, well, I think we're still. I mean, I think anyone who says they're doing much more than exploring with it, other than a few people I
mhm.
know have actually started a business based on stuff they've written with AI or
Mm.
whatever, is sort of kidding themselves. We're all still learning because
Yeah,
it's a moving target anyway. Like the capacity of these systems is changing so fast that it takes time just to keep up with them, let alone
yeah.
be at the front end. So,
I'm hoping academically as well.
mm,
Um, I think it will help us because I know that people are increasingly using AI to do things like scan and review papers.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's useless at telling you if something's valid, but it can very quickly tell you if people are talking about something. I mean, I built a like an academic paper recommendation engine years ago
mhm.
using search engine pieces, like to
Yeah,
recommend which journal to submit a paper to.
yeah,
And that was a real mess because we were basically trying to pervert search engines into giving you reasonable answers. And I've tested that now on modern LLMs, and they're just bang on, right? Like
hmm,
if I didn't do much of it, I've done it before with like 1,000 papers, and you build a test rig, and
yeah,
you don't tell the machine which journal actually published it, and you check. But
yeah.
it was getting very close, or in some cases, like, yep, that's not the journal that published this, but it's the journal that the authors would have liked to have been in. I mean, that stuff is just so advanced now. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think it's a very positive thing for us. This
Mm,
isn't a bad thing. This is just on fundamentals. I should mention we've got an accept the Beyond
mm,
Hurwitz paper.
yeah.
So we're going to be presenting a conference on mechanism design, mainstream in the United Kingdom this
Mm.
June. Going to be fantastic.
You should have a
Uh,
you should have a meetup in London or something. There's a few
we, sh- we,
Cytizens in
we
London.
should. If you're in London or York, I think it's in York. We'll go grab
The
a beer.
UK's
Partner might be there.
UK's smaller than an Australian or a North American city. Come on, it's like
Yeah.
half an hour to drive across the thing or something like that.
And anyway, that's good news. But I think it's also good news for us as a project
Mm,
because a lot of people who are in crypto they don't realize that we are a radical project in the sense that we think that a lot of other things are just broken,
mm,
and Sato is intended to fix those. But that can also make it difficult to communicate with people
yeah.
because often you'll talk to someone and it takes them a bit of time to realize, wait a minute, they disagree, but they're not disagreeing because they don't know the stuff I know. They're disagreeing because they
But
actually know it at a
yeah,
level that's a bit deeper than I feel comfortable.
yeah.
So I think LLMs will really help us with that as well.
Mm,
So on both fronts, on the technical front and on the idea front.
yep.
And if you're out there working on AI
Yep.
or you've got ideas for how AI should work with Sato, I guess the big takeaway is you don't need to ask for permission.
Nope.
You can let us know what you are doing or you want to do, and we'll figure out how to integrate it with the wiki and the site.
Yep.
And if you want to build an application and you want to play around with AI doing it and you need a bit of help getting started, let us know too, because we're
Definitely.
happy to help you, take a look at the application that you want to build and say, well, here's the fastest way that we think you can get a productive AI building it for you.
Yep. Definitely. Cool. Well, we should probably wrap it up there and not go on for too long. But I think this is really fun and good to let people know kind of where we're at and what's buzzing around the project.
Richard has 5 copies of his beleaguered NFT.
Yeah.
Only
Very
five,
awesome.
limited edition.
Yeah, I could have made 10, but I was too tight to do that. So
Yeah.
there's only
You
five.
should, you
So
should
here we
modify
go.
it for Spider. Spider's my solitaire.
It works on all the leaderboards. So
Oh, it does?
yeah, it's universal.
Hey, I'm in. I'm
Well,
in.
it's what the AI made for me, but it is actually works for all of them.
Does it work? We will find out, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, if it makes your scene run slow, don't blame me.
okay.
Or do blame me and let me know, and I'll see if I can fix it.
Yeah, do it on an anonymous account first.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Okay.
We'll see ya.